I'm Malcolm Roberts, and I'm here with Richard Hopkins on the Central Coast of New South Wales. Richard is very, very special because he has got an extremely good talent for research and applies it in many fields. And one of them, very important one, is medical cannabis. He so impressed Greg Hunt, the previous health minister, that Greg Hunt said, after just half an hour of listening to you talk, said it is the best presentation on medical cannabis that he has ever heard. So that's really important. Now, how many people are using medical cannabis or using cannabis for medical purposes in Australia?
Malcolm, about 1 million people.
1 million?
1 million people every year will access medical cannabis.
That's 1/25, 4%.
Yep.
No, hang on. Yeah, 4%.
That's it. 1 million people. And it's illegal. So why are 1 million people breaking the law every year? Because they have to. Medical cannabis is a necessity for people. It's not a choice.
How did you get into it?
My daughter has severe epilepsy, and the pharmaceuticals were starting to not work because you do build up a tolerance over time.
Mm-hmm.
And this last medication that she is on now is the last one. So if that stops working, or when that stops working, there is nothing else. There's nothing beyond it. That's how I got involved in medical cannabis, because I thought, oh, no problem, we can give her medical cannabis. Only to discover, of course, that, well, no, you can't. And when the government said that they had made medical cannabis available to people, what they actually did was made it harder to get, not easier. So 1 million people a year use medical cannabis. Only 800 people have been given access by the government. 800 out of 1 million.
So tell me about Chase. We discussed Chase before.
Sure. Chase Walker is a young lad, 4 years old, 5 years old.
Here in Australia?
Here in Australia, in Newcastle, who has cerebral palsy. And his condition was not being treated very effectively with pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. So his parents put him onto medical cannabis. And it was amazing. Instantaneous improvement. Medical cannabis gave Chase the quality of life back again. However, the government went, no, you can't give this was the state government. This was, well, the problem is they all work together. You've got the Federal Health Department that sets the agenda, and then you have the state governments that carry it out. So Youth and Community Services here in New South Wales literally went to Chase's home and took him away.
Just took him away?
Because his parents were giving him medical cannabis. That was working.
Can you believe that? In this country, taking kids from their families.
It's happening a lot. This is the new stolen generation. And I'm not making light of the first Australian stolen generation, but look, this is happening a lot. Parents are being sent to jail.
So it worked with Chase?
It worked with Chase.
And then they took him away?
Now, they put him back on regular pharmaceuticals. Are those working? We don't know. It's been 66 weeks. Since,
so that's a year and a quarter.
More than a year now. Since his parents last saw him. They are moving him through motels with different foster parents just keeping an eye on him. What? This is his life. Yeah, exactly.
So he hasn't seen his parents?
He hasn't seen his parents for 66 weeks.
And then moving him around.
So
that he can't be traced.
So that his parents can't come and get him. For the crime of healing your child with a plant that was put on this earth to heal us. This is the outrageous thing. They're not giving him drugs, they're giving him medical cannabis.
A natural whole
plant substance that can't hurt you.
So let's talk about that because, you know, it's quite complex, but it can be simplified. Okay.
So there's 9 schedules, and that emphasises how bad it is to put medical cannabis in 9, which is the worst.
So 9 is toxins, poisons.
9 is toxins and poisons like heroin.
That you cannot use, not even with a prescription. You just
there's not effectively a safe level to use them at.
Okay, so 9 is things that can't be used. Yes. 8 is things that can be used with
strong medical supervision.
Okay, and 4 is the schedule where a doctor can prescribe it. So you want, and a lot of people want, it to be medical cannabis, whole plant cannabis, to be put on Schedule 4, prescribed by doctors.
Yes.
Under supervision of medically trained people.
Yes.
Okay. And it was on 8.
Yes.
Okay, under close supervision.
Yes.
Who moved it to 9?
Malcolm Turnbull
As Prime Minister.
as Prime Minister.
So it's a recent change.
Oh yeah,
It went to 9, the same level as heroin.
yes,
Toxins
Yes.
can't be used.
yes.
Well, hang on, it's got proven effect. So has Malcolm Turnbull got any connections out of that? Or
Funny you should say that. Malcolm Turnbull owns shares in drug companies like Pfizer, so he has a direct financial interest in maintaining the profitability of the drug companies and stopping this threat from medical cannabis. But look, it's even worse. Lucy is the managing director. His wife is a managing director of a pharmaceutical company here in Sydney. This pharmaceutical company works in the same space as cannabis. They are working on patenting a technology to tailor medications to each person's own system, so it's personal medication, and they do work better when you do that. But of course, that's what cannabis does. So what Lucy's company is working on is in direct competition with medical cannabis. So it's no surprise that Malcolm has gone, no medical cannabis for you.
so let me see if I can understand what's going on, because you've been dealing with this for years, but it's very complex. We're trying to break it down really simply. Whole cannabis works. It's natural. The body deals with it because it is a whole food, and every part of it works in harmony with the other parts.
Yes.
So, because it's a natural food, it can't be patented. Natural plant,
correct.
it can't be patented.
That's correct.
So, to make money out of it, something has to be isolated in it.
Yes.
So, some companies are then wanting to isolate a key component in,
Yes.
in
Usually one
what
of
do
the
you call it?
CBDs,
The active
cannabinoids.
ingredients.
Yeah, the active
Okay.
ingredients. One of the cannabinoids in there.
Okay, so if a drug company can isolate that active ingredient, then it can patent the drug, it can make all the money on it.
That's right.
All right. But medical cannabis is effective because it's whole and all the different components interact.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called the entourage effect.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
120
I remember you mentioning that in
Yeah.
the past.
120 active ingredients, if you like.
120 in one
120
food.
in one food, in one plant. Yeah. In addition, or out of a total of 480 different compounds. Now, those other compounds are not in there for the fun of it. They're in there to work with and to make the active ingredients work better, to regulate them, to help uptake, to prevent overdoses. The beautiful thing about medical cannabis is that you can't overdose because the body just excretes it.
Now, so some companies are trying to isolate key components to patent drugs. Some are going further and trying to, once they find those key components, they then try to synthesize them.
That's
Then
right.
they can have a complete exclusive
Yeah.
patent.
Once they synthesize it, then they can put a patent on it. So it starts out as being a CBD extract, for instance, but then they synthesize it, but then they can put a patent on it, then they can charge whatever they want for it. And that's certainly where they're going, which is why natural whole plant medical cannabis is effectively illegal, because if that's out there, if those million Australians are using a safe, natural
Simple.
alternative, no money for them.
So medical cannabis is proven, it's safe because
Yes.
it's a natural product. Anything to fiddle with it means it's no longer natural and
That's
whole.
right.
So there'd be more risk in something that's synthetic for sure,
Yep.
and more risk in something that's been tampered
Yes.
with.
Yep. All the extracts, even if they're just extracting a natural CBD out of it, once you take it out of the entourage effect, once you take it out of all those other substances that are designed to help it work better, then you do risk overdoses. One of the things with CBD, if you take a high dose CBD extract over a long period of time, the body reacts to that, it builds up a tolerance, the body goes haywire. It needs all of the other whole plant substances to moderate, to regulate how the body handles it. So everything these days about medical cannabis is coming back to whole plant, to taking the whole plant together. And that's what the medical community are worried about, because you can't patent that. It's just a natural...
So this is not about curing people, it's about taking money from their
It's about
bodies.
money. All the decisions about medical cannabis are being taken about money.
So it's a proven whole food, a proven whole plant that the body does well with. It can handle every component of it because they're all together. But because money can't be made of it in the exclusive way, super profits, then people want to try and ban it. Well,
Yes.
they are banning it.
Look, it's disrupting the pharmaceutical model, because it doesn't fit the pharmaceutical model of having one drug that may suit thousands of people. Rather, you've got one drug that suits everyone, because of those 480 compounds, when you put that into a human body, the body recognises oh, this is medical cannabis. I recognise this ingredient. I recognise that drug. I'll need a bit of this. I'll take a bit of that. The human body actually picks through medical cannabis and stores what
and
it
your
needs.
body would do it differently from my body or someone else's body.
My body would do
it's actually a tailored drug.
Yes.
It's actually a tailored food that provides chemicals to
Lucy
the body.
Turnbull, drug tailoring already exists. It's called medical cannabis.
So it's whole of plant, it's entirely natural, it's proven to be effective. No one has ever died from an overdose of
No one has ever died from an overdose of medical cannabis.
whole
Plant, natural medical cannabis. Yep.
So it's very important to understand whole plant medical cannabis. So now some people have annoyed you and others who are pushing for medical whole plant cannabis by trying to also get recreational marijuana approved. You're not wanting to go there at the moment for a very simple reason, because there are unknowns with recreational marijuana and you don't want to confuse the issue. This is about not recreational use, this is about medical use, about healing people, curing people. So what is the difference between a smoke triggered component in the in marijuana compared with whole food cannabis?
Yeah. The thing with cannabis is that in its natural state, it has no psychoactive component to it.
So it doesn't give you any, it's nothing psychoactive, nothing hallucinogenic about it.
No, you can walk into a field of medical cannabis and eat away and nothing's going to happen, other than you might get a little bit healthier. But it doesn't, it doesn't get you high. The psychoactive element, THC in cannabis, has to be activated to make it work. In its raw state, the THC molecule is too big. THCA molecule is too big to fit in the brain. It can't absorb it, so it can't get you high.
It goes into the bloodstream, goes through the brain, but it won't lodge in any of the receptors in the brain.
The cannabinoid receptor, and that's the interesting thing. We have cannabinoid receptors in our body. Naturally. The human body comes with a cannabis receptor, cannabinoid receptor. We have a CBD in our body that handles gut health, and we have one in our brain. So the human body is actually made to receive, process and use cannabis to help us heal. It's called the human endocannabinoid system. We discovered it 20 years ago. At that time, we should have legalised medical cannabis because it was perfectly clear 20 years ago that this plant perfectly matches the human body to help the human body heal itself. This isn't a drug. It's not the plant that heals you. The plant gives your own body the building blocks, the cannabinoids necessary to heal itself. That's why it's so effective across a wide range of diseases, because the human body can heal itself of a wide range of diseases.
So what changes it into a psychoactive component?
Thank you for asking that question, because this is something that a lot of people don't realise, is that to make cannabis psychoactive, to make cannabis get you high, you actually have to heat it above 105 degrees centigrade. That is,
so
you have to
fire in a cigarette.
The cigarette would do it. Drying it out, smoking it will do it. There's a couple of other ways to do it. That's the most common way.
So now David Lanham has pushed this, but he's also put not recreational use. He's pushed medical cannabis.
Yeah.
Now he's also pushed vaping of it. Now, what's the difference there? Is vaping at a temperature below the 105 degrees?
Vaping only heats it enough for the active ingredients to evaporate out. Now, you walk through the bush on a hot day, you can see the evaporation coming through. It's not 105 degrees C out there. A vaping stick works the same. So it simply heats up whatever's in there to a temperature which is hot enough to produce a vapour, but not hot enough to process the CB. The THC.
So people pushing or advocating for whole plant medical cannabis, you're supporting?
Yes.
Because they're supporting people.
Yep.
David Lanham you support because he's pushing vaping.
He's dead right on vaping. Don't listen to the horror stories about vaping. They are cigarette company propaganda. This is the thing. In the jurisdictions that have legalised medical cannabis, smoking rates fall dramatically. Right? The vaping is a large part of that. You can start with a vape, which has got a normal solution of nicotine in it.
And then this is separate from medical cannabis.
This is separate from medical cannabis. And then you can go 80% solution, 60%, 40%, 20%. It's the easiest way to give up smoking.
It's
the easiest
proven.
way.
It's proven in the United Kingdom.
It's proven by scientifically, but it's also proven empirically. Just look at the places that have legalised vaping, and smoking rates have fallen, country after country, society after society. And here's the thing: the benefit also is stopping recidivism, because once they've finished smoking, they can still vape. The most common vapes on the market aren't tobacco or aren't marijuana, they're herbal. They've got Earl Grey and bergamot and cinnamon and nutmeg.
Take my Earl Grey.
Well, that's it. That's what they're doing. People are actually vaping up a nice cup of tea.
So you've got whole plant medical cannabis, you've got vaping of whole plant medical cannabis, and then you've got recreational use of marijuana, which you're not advocating.
Yeah, they're different areas, and I know that's going to be slightly controversial to some of the people in the community watching this, but we need to talk about medical cannabis first. We have to try for the easier thing first, and the easier thing first is letting doctors prescribe medical cannabis.
So when you say you would like to try for that first, you're not actively advocating for the recreational use at the moment, but you're saying to people, hey, back off on the recreational use, because you only scare a lot of people, and that will hurt the million people who want this for medical treatment. So you're saying, let's keep the two issues separate, because they are separate.
Yes.
So let's get the medical use approved.
Yep.
And then those who want recreational marijuana, they go ahead and keep going with the campaign.
Yep.
And they might be better off doing that way, because people will realise whole plant medical cannabis is nothing sinister.
In most jurisdictions where medical cannabis has been legalised, recreational cannabis was then legalised.
And did the sky collapse?
No.
It didn't.
California took 20 years to get there. Mm-hmm. Some of the newer states in America that have only had medical cannabis a couple of years have already gone to legal recreational cannabis. So we need to get medical cannabis into the hands of the million people a year who the government is turning into criminals, who the government is forcing to break the law, to give them relief for their condition that pharmaceuticals clearly are not giving them. Otherwise, why would they bother with medical cannabis? Now,
the government is correct in saying it is approving more people access to medical cannabis. The reality is, but it's 800 people out of a million, and only 200 of them, in effect, can get it.
That's it. The point is, they've put so many rules and regulations over the growers and the importers of legal medical cannabis that their overhead costs are so high, that the volume, the throughput through their warehouses is so low, that it's costing thousands of dollars for a prescription. Thousands of dollars for a prescription. Now, growing
and excuse me, I've got to jump in here. It's forcing people to use the drugs that are patented and that might have side effects.
Well, I think the whole idea of that is to force people back onto PBS drugs, which are pharmaceutical drugs, which the government pays thousands of dollars for, but the patient only pays $39.
Now, would there be anything to stop me going and getting a smoothie made of whole plant cannabis?
This is the other wonderful thing about cannabis. It's a perfect food. It's got protein, it's got fibre, it's got vitamins and minerals. It's got the best antioxidant profile of any substance.
Better than, what do they call those oils?
Krill, fish oil, Cannabis has got a better antioxidant profile than krill.
So this highly beneficial plant is banned simply because they can't make as much money off it.
Yes. But the point is, increasingly we're discovering that a green plant smoothie is the best way of giving certainly kids medical cannabis. Most of the people who would benefit from medical cannabis would benefit from a green plant smoothie. You can't get high, you can't overdose. You're getting nutrition and fibre and antioxidants along with your drug.
So no one...
Okay, and I just said drug, which is wrong. Bear with me, you know what I mean.
Food is a drug.
Well, okay.
They affect on moods. All foods are drugs. They're whole foods, as distinct from as distinct from a scheduled drug. So medical research has shown that it's harmless.
Yes.
Whole plant cannabis is harmless. Okay. Let's explain the schedules again. So currently, medical cannabis has been moved from 8, which is approval under strict conditions, to poison, not for anyone's use. You want it moved to 4 so that it can be simply prescribed by a person's doctor, and that's a matter between the doctor and the patient who wants who wants to be cured?
We have these things called doctors who spend all those years at medical school, who go all of this post-qualification training, who know their patients, who knows what's best for the patients, and do we leave the decision to them? No. We tell them to fill out paperwork that takes 4 months to fill out, 6 months to fill out, send it down to Canberra and have a bureaucrat decide whether that's right or not. Well, that's a crazy system. What the Reset campaign and what One Nation, I understand, are committed to is restoring the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship. It should be the doctor's decision. You know, in Australia, every few months, the industry run courses for doctors to learn about medical cannabis, how to prescribe
And the
medical
doctors
cannabis.
are requesting these?
The doctors are queuing out the door. They turn doctors away every time. Doctors are loving hearing about medical cannabis. They want to hear about it. They want to prescribe it. They want to use medical cannabis and they can't. The government isn't letting them. Right? So don't blame your local doctor. Don't blame the medical profession. Blame the bureaucrats. Blame the pharmaceutical industries. They're the ones who are pulling the strings there in Canberra. Right? This needs to stop. Doctors need to make the decision about what's right for their patient, not bureaucrats, not politicians, and not drug companies.
And Richard, you don't need a change in legislation. You just need a regulatory change. So a minister can do that like that.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Reset campaign has written the regulations, 50 pages of regulations, finished, written, all ready to table in Parliament. If the
Why 50 pages?
Well, there's a lot of regulations to change. The government has put in a lot of regulatory obstacles to medical cannabis. These aren't legislative obstacles. The legislation that passed Parliament in 2016 legalised medical cannabis. It doesn't need to be changed. What the government then did to make sure no one got it was introduced a whole pile of regulations on prescribing, on growing, on transport that effectively stop a person getting it. 800 approvals, 200 people actually getting it. So what the Reset campaign...
So they're basically banning it?
They've basically banned it. Don't let anyone tell you it's been legalised. They made it harder to get. By moving it to Schedule 8, where doctors could get it under the Special Access Scheme, to Schedule 9, which is next to heroin, they've made sure that it's almost impossible to get. They made it harder to get, not easier.
So let me see if I can pass a test on this.
Sure.
Whole plant medical cannabis is natural. The body is designed to cope with it. Not cope with it, it wants it.
Yes.
It performs better with it.
Yes.
If we could eat whole plant medical cannabis or have it in a smoothie, it'd be wonderfully nutritious, health giving.
Yep.
Okay. So it has been moved under the Turnbull government from Schedule 8, use under careful supervision, to banned.
Yes, 9.
So it's not the same as recreational use of marijuana, and it is not psychoactive. So medical cannabis, whole plant cannabis, is not psychoactive, has no hallucinogenic effects or anything like that.
Unless you post-process it.
And it's not, what's the word when people crave it? Habitual?
Addictive.
Addictive, thank you. So it's not addictive. It is beneficial and there are no side effects. It's been proven in research extensively, various countries around the world. Other countries have legalised it. The sky hasn't collapsed. People have benefited. Meanwhile, in Australia, a few people are paying exorbitant amounts to get it.
Yep.
The drug companies are protected and making a squillion out of alternatives that don't work.
Yep.
And
For some people, be fair. Some people do benefit from pharmaceutical drugs. The medication my daughter is on at the moment is actually working. So I wouldn't take her off that and put her on medical cannabis because the medication is controlling her seizures. But there are 1 million people in this country who are making criminals of themselves to get medical cannabis because their pharmaceuticals are not working for them. And that might only be 1 million out of 25 million. But isn't that enough people to go, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Well, helping some people make money. So,
Yes.
Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, just wanted to say in closing, I guess I'm the demon weed generation. I've grown up my whole life hearing about how horrible marijuana was, how the world would end if it were legalised. And then a funny thing happened. America legalised it, 28 states now. And they're a very similar jurisdiction to Australia, so is Canada for that matter, Portugal. These high-end Western societies have all legalised medical cannabis. So we know what is going to happen when it is legalised, and it's all good. What we see is narcotic drug use Opioids. 1,000 people are going to die in Australia this year from legally prescribed opioids. Deaths from opioids in the jurisdictions of medical cannabis fall 20%. So that's 200 lives that we've saved. And those lives lost is reducing as more people get hold of medical cannabis in those countries. There's a potential to save 1,000 lives here. But it's also a little ways. Absenteeism at work reduces. Because someone who's got a bad back and is using an opioid, they're stoned. They're laying in bed out of it. But that same person can take medical cannabis and be completely functioning in the workplace. Workplace accidents fall. Workplace absenteeism falls. Productivity rises. Serious car accidents, no change. However you cut it, there are simply no downsides to legal medical cannabis in the countries that have legalised it. It's all good news. That is the reverse of what I thought it would be. The reverse.
And not only helping with physical ailments, but also helping with emotional treatment of emotional conditions, PTSD and other things.
Vets and PTSD. 23 veterans in America commit suicide every day. The Trump administration is trying hard to get medical cannabis into their hands. Gee, 23 a day. Look, we've got the same problem with our vets. And if you talk to the Wounded Warriors people in Queensland, they took 17 months to get a single vet approved for medical cannabis for PTSD. 17 months. These people risk their lives for the country. This is how we treat them? No.
I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thanks, Malcolm.